Good evening, everybody from Berlin, and welcome to our virtual event entitled Female and Feminist Activism in West Asia and North Africa. My name is Anna-Theresa Bachmann. I am a journalist as well as a member of Disorient, and I will be your host this afternoon. This event has been co-organized by two organizations. The first one is Disorient, which is a platform for young journalists, academics, and activists who work in or on North Africa and West Asia. Together, Disorient puts together an online magazine, which is mostly focused on German content and ranges from topics regarding social movements, political economy, or feminism. But we also organize events, discussion rounds, and exhibitions on various topics. The other organization and host of this evening is called Ashark, a Berlin-based travel agency. Ashark offers political study tours all the way from Lebanon, Oman, or Iraqi Kurdistan, and due to Corona, also now here in Germany. On today's journey, though, me and our team here in Berlin will take you on a journey to Morocco, Kuwait, and Sudan, where we will be talking to three female and feminist activists who will tell us about their work and the situation in their respective countries regarding women's rights. This event is interactive, which means for you as the audience that each speaker will have about 15 to 20 minutes to give their input, followed by 10 minutes of questions and answers, which you can raise. Depending on the platform you're using today, Facebook or Zoom, you can send us your questions by typing them into the Facebook comments or via the question and answer function in Zoom. Furthermore, this event is part of a series called Ferngespräche, which means in German, long distance calls. All events of this series are free to attend. However, if you like our work and would like to support us, it would be great if you could share a small donation with us using the tools that my colleagues will be posting in the comment sections now. If you cannot attend this full event this afternoon and would like to continue watching at a later stage, it is also possible for you to find this video later on the Ashark YouTube channel. It's going to take a couple of days, but if you follow us also on Facebook, then you will be informed once the video is online. Without further ado, we would like to move now to our first country, this one being Morocco. There, a manifesto started circulating in September 2019, which got soon picked up by international media channels. This manifesto was signed by a collective that called themselves Moroccan Outlaws. Among other things, this manifesto read, and we're going to share it now while I'm reading. Every day, I feel guilty for being loving, for loving and being loved. Every time a woman is arrested, I am an accomplice. I tell myself it could have been me. Then I stay silent. I try to forget and move on. But I cannot do it anymore. I cannot stand it anymore. Because my body belongs to me. It does not belong to my father, my husband, my entourage, nor the eyes of men in the streets, and even less so, the state. Today, I want to end the cycle of shame. I, who loves, aborts, has sex without being married. I, who hides. I, who risks disgrace, infamy, and prison. I now welcome Sonia Terrab in Casablanca. Sonia is a filmmaker, writer, and journalist. And she's also a member of the collective Moroccan Outlaws who put together this manifesto. Among other things, Sonia will talk about what sparked this manifesto, how it is connected to the colonial legacy of Morocco, and also what happened after the manifesto got published. So, yeah, welcome, Sonia.
Hello.
Hello, it's really nice to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, without further introduction, the floor is yours.
So yeah, it was really touching to see the words you chose from the manifesto, to read them again. Because I remember it was 1 year ago, 1 year already, when we wrote this manifesto and published it, Leila Slimani and myself. So Leila Slimani is a famous Moroccan French writer, and I'm a filmmaker in Morocco. And we did this because in September last year, a journalist has been arrested for abortion and sexual relationship outside of wedlock. And she was arrested with her fiancé, her doctor, like 2 doctors, and even, if I remember well, like the secretary or something like this, the help. It was like 5 people arrested. So it was a huge scandal in Morocco, especially because she was a journalist, and a lot of people felt bad because of it. And with Leila Slimani, we decided to do something, and like to do something big. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, we decided to do something big and to publish this manifesto, and the thing is, it was like well prepared. So she was in jail. The journalist was in jail with her doctor and her fiance, and she was condemned to 2 years in jail. And no, yeah, 2 years for the doctor and 1 year for herself. And so we decided that we will write this manifesto and we will declare ourselves outlaws in order to protest against this arrest, but also to protest against the hypocrisy in Morocco, and all the shame and the taboos and everything that makes our society so bad, with like relationship with each other's and women bodies and things like that. So we decided that we are going to publish it, but we're going to have 490 people sign it with us. And 490 people, why 490? Because it's the article of the law. So it's the law 490 that condemn, criminalize relationship outside, sexual relationship outside wedlock. And also this 490 people that signed with us, a majority of them were women. Like it was like 320 women, and some guys, some men signed with us as a support. And it was a lot of different women. So we had like intellectuals, artists, but also like normal women, like lawyers, doctors, and all kinds of Moroccan women signed this. And we published it, like we chose like this day, and we went live with it, and it worked. We made the front page of the newspaper Le Monde in France, but also a lot of newspaper here in Morocco. And the strategy was like everyone is going to share it at the same time, the same day, like at 10 o'clock in the morning, everyone is going to share it. And it worked so well. It was a huge buzz. And from like 1 second to the other, everyone was talking about it, and everyone was sharing it. And everyone keep signing it, like sending mails to sign the manifesto with us. So we got to like thousands and thousands and thousands signatures very quickly. And we made our like pages on digital media, on social media, like on Facebook and Instagram, and we got like a lot of followers going days after days. And we started like a lot of, it created like this huge national debate. So everyone was talking about it. And then it worked so well that the journalists and the doctor and the fiancé were freed from prison, liberated by the king's grace. I don't know how to say that in English. Maybe it's the same. And yeah, so it was kind of overwhelming. And also for us, it meant something. It meant that people are ready now to talk about it, and especially the youth, because a lot of people who follows us today, who support us, are young people, young Moroccan, that feel that they are not like free in their daily life, because we weren't there like talking about politics or like making the revolution or things like this. No, we were just talking about like daily life, the fact that you cannot be in love, the fact that you cannot have like a boyfriend or a girlfriend and be on the streets, and maybe the cop can arrest you and you can end up in jail, and you can't have an abortion, or if a lot of things go bad with this all these limits, like this forbidden freedom that we have. So yeah, everything went really quickly after that, and especially that's because these laws also what was important for us in this national debates that we created is that these laws were created by the French during the protectorate when we were colonized by the French, and it was inspired by the penal code of the French people. But along the way, like French people abhorred these laws, but we kept them. And now people are like, no, because we are a Muslim country and this is like Muslim values, but it has nothing to do with Muslim countries or Muslim values. These laws has been made by the French, and then we always find excuse to keep them. And today we are like working to abolish these laws. That's our main goal. So now we are very known in Morocco. So they call us Moroccan Outlaws, and we get support from all over the world. And we talk about abortion, we talk about relationship outside wedlock, but we also talk about LGBT plus rights. And we created this platform in social media that is very that has a lot of followers and a lot of interactions. We are almost at 40,000 followers on Instagram and 50,000 on Facebook, which is a lot. And we have the first and like only social movement in Morocco with this kind of interactions on social media. So our motto is like we have to free the speech before changing the law. It's very important today for us to create this platform, to have this platform, to give young Moroccan a safe place to speak up and to share with us a lot of testimonies and a lot of stories and a lot of sometimes they send us messages and they say we feel that we are not alone anymore. We feel that someone is we feel that we found our community. So our main objective today, changing the law, yes, but also like building this community through social media. And we also did like this petition in the parliament to bring the debate in the parliament. So it's going on. We have been stopped by the coronavirus because it's hard to gather signatures and stuff. So we've been stopped by the coronavirus, but we kept enhancing our presence on social media, especially during the quarantine that we had in Morocco. And we were like this. We were like here for our community, and we always talk about things that are taboos and the things that are that people are not used to talk about it freely like this, and with a lot of people interacting with each other. So this is for us like a huge pride. Like we are very, very proud of it, and we want to continue doing that because we believe that if we gather a bigger and bigger and bigger community, so our voice will get heard, and we will change the law. We are really confident about this. So I think that's all. I don't know if
Yeah, thank you very much, Sonia, for your input. My colleagues will now put together some questions that we have. And as I already mentioned, the audience, you can make your comments and send us your questions using the comment section on Facebook or the Q&A function on Zoom. While we're waiting for the questions to come in, I would like to ask you, Sonia, since you have started this petition, was there any reaction from the government? How have they responded to your call?
we got a lot of reactions from the political parties, because we know that, because in Morocco now we have this reform of the penal code that is going on for 4 years now. So it's the perfect moment to bring these debates on the table and say, okay, now you want to reform this penal code, so we want to reform also these laws. And with the manifesto and what we did, we succeeded in really bringing the debate inside political parties. We know that inside political parties we had like these splits, and like people were with us and people were against us, but they were talking. And I think that's the best thing we did, and that's for now that's our biggest success, the fact that these people were talking like to each other and were like, okay, there is a problem, young people are talking about it, they were talking about us in universities, in coffees, in the street, on internet, everywhere. And to bring this discussion in the political party, and even people that were afraid in their parties to bring these issues on the table, they were not afraid to do it anymore. And we don't have a lot of political parties like in Morocco. We have a lot of political parties, but we have a big conservative parts of them. Like there are more conservative parties than not liberal parties, if you want. But in the meantime, we believe that if we keep, as I said, enhancing our community and like gathering and like creating this space and having this bigger voice, that's how we can also bring the debate in the parliament. We know that we are going to stay a minority. We know that, but the fact is that we are also aware that from the history, like from always, the minorities are the one that's making the society progress. Mm-hmm. Like the minorities are the one that's bringing the differences. We always see that. So that's why we today we are kind of hopeful. Yeah.
Thank you. Then we have questions from the audience, from Claudia, and she would like to know if you are connected to any other female feminists in other Arab countries.
The thing is that we want to connect, but we are a really new movement. We've just been like here for a year, and now we are trying to organize, and we are trying to have our own space and have like all people that want to work with us gathered also in one space and stuff like this, and also raising funds. And we have a lot of ideas, and we want to do a lot of things. Unfortunately, the coronavirus has put like a small stop in all of our projects, but we are in this part, like now, in this time where we are organizing to maybe in the next level have been more like open to other organization and in the Arab world and stuff to work together. But first we have to organize in Morocco. And we are just doing it, and we seem really big, but we are not. We are just a small team, and we are working a lot. And we have this huge followers and like audience in the digital media. But in the meantime, we really need to organize in an internal level. Yeah.
Then we have a question from Chris. And if I understand it correctly, this question regards the numbers of abortions, because Chris would like to know if there are any concrete numbers that you use for raising awareness of the topic of abortions, especially unsafe abortions.
Yeah.
So could you talk a little bit about that when it comes to statistics?
I think we have the numbers in the manifesto, and the numbers are like really bad. It's like between 600 and 800 abortions a day in Morocco, illegal abortions, between 600 and 800 a day, which is like a lot. And we have also this number, but we didn't have it in the manifesto, but we got it after. It's like I think every hour there is like 20 babies that are abandoned in Morocco. Because women, and especially that those low people say that we are elitist, and that's yes, because it's like a problem of the rich, and that we don't need that in Morocco. That in Morocco we have a bigger problem like justice and education and health. Of course, we have a lot of problems in Morocco, but in the meantime, it's not. The fact is that the people who are suffering from these laws are not the rich, because the rich can go to another country to abort, have money, they can play with the law. But like the poor people, and there is a majority of poor people in Morocco, they have no one to help them, and that's where the tragedy happens. That's why we have so many abortion and so many like death and so many like babies abandoned in the trash. We like every day in Morocco you found babies in the trash, and for us this is outraging. We are not even talking about like the lifestyle. We are just talking about like tragedies, daily tragedies.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Then Irina, I would like to know, are your supporters mainly women, or are they also progressive Moroccan men?
That's what's good with our movement. We have men supporting us as well, because when we did the manifesto with the men signing with us as support, so today we have like this 60% women and 40% men, and we especially have people supporting us are between 18 years old and 25 years old. So it's really the young people. And we also won this award, which is the Simone de Beauvoir prize for the freedom of women, which is like a huge prize. We won it. We won like in last year, like at the end of last year, and we won this prize. They told us that we won this prize because we had men with us, because we were like this new model. You know, we are feminists, but in the meantime we have men supporting us. Like when you see our logo in Arabic, it's the logo, it's in feminine, it's not masculine, it's feminine, but like men share it, and men put the logo in their like profile pictures and stuff like this. So it's beautiful to see like a man and putting this feminist logo in his, because he knows he's concerned as well, but in the meantime he knows that women suffers more. So we are on the same boat. We all suffer from it, but in the same time, women suffer more because of abortion, but also because of the taboos of the society. Because not even like if a cop arrests you or something, and even if you don't go to jail, your parents can kill you. You know, not literally kill you, but it can cause you a lot of problems. So and yeah, and also because a lot of young people today prefer like live in Morocco to go study abroad or like work abroad because of this lack of freedom. So we have a lot of messages from Moroccan all over the world and writing to us and saying, I hope thanks to you I can come back to my country one day and have children in my country one day. And this is like the best things. Like for us, it's the most important thing, is these testimonies.
Yeah. Now you talk mostly about young people who join you, but do you also have support from the older generation? It's one of the questions by an anonymous member of the audience.
Yeah, we had this support at the beginning with the manifesto. Like the 490 people who signed with us are the old generation, and as I told you, it was like famous intellectual and artists and stuff like this. But now those people are already identified. We know them. We know they are supporting this cause for many years now. They are supporting it in their daily life, in their work. Like we know them. For us, we want the new generation. We want to bring a new generation, to bring it together and say, okay, now we were some like few intellectuals and stuff, and we know each other, but now here we have this the whole new generation, like thousands and thousands and thousands of young people, and they are willing to do anything for the freedom. So what can we do together? That's our main objective.
When you look at your Instagram, there are a lot of testimonies that you post. Do you have a number in mind, like how many of these testimonies you get?
I think we started with this testimonies, and because we want to free the speech, to change the law, so we always share testimonies, and it's testimonies that goes for like these laws, like this people that something happened to them because of these laws, like with abortion and with like having sexual relationship outside wedlock. It can be the neighbors, it can be the cops, it can be the family, like a lot of things like that. But we also have a lot of testimonies from the LGBT plus community, and also a lot of testimonies about child abuse, because in Morocco we have this huge problem. We have a lot of child abuse, is like a national tragedy, and every 3 months we have like a scandal, or like some kid like being killed because of it, or like some guy that is not prosecuted and he's like a pedophile, and the fact that we have these taboos and that people don't talk about this stuff. We want to say, okay, there is a problem in Morocco. The fact that we don't talk about this stuff, it's also brings like this augmentation, like this increasing of child abuse. So we have a lot of testimonies also about child abuse, and I think we've been we exist for 1 year now, and we got more than 1,000 testimonies overall. Yeah.
Wow. There's another question again concerning the statistics that you mentioned about abortion. Can you give our audience some hints where they can get more information about something like this, like women's organization, for example, who put together information? If you could drop some names, I think it would be helpful.
I think it's not an easy question, because I know that like you can find like des rapports like from like the UN or UN Women or stuff like this. In Morocco, we have something called HCP, Haut Commissariat au Plan. So that's the organization, if you want, that gives us the number. But I really don't know. I know that in our manifesto we quote this number, so we got them from the Haut Commissariat au Plan. But I cannot give you like one address or one. No, I don't have it. No.
I mean, certainly it's also hard to count. I mean, I'm sure there are also many cases that will not come out.
Exactly, a lot. Yeah.
We have a question from.
Okay. Sorry. No, go
on. We have another question from Lena. Do you face any hard opposition from the politicians or from the civil society?
No, I don't feel that way, because I know the opposition is here, but it's not a hard opposition. It's like a discussion. I feel we are discussing it, and we are not pressured. We are not threatened or anything like this. We are just discussing it, and that is cool, because at first people, especially like my entourage, my family and stuff, they were afraid. They were like, why do you do that? You will have problems and stuff. But no, we don't have problems, and this is the proof that we are ready to talk about it. This is what gave us more strength, because sometimes the biggest problem is the self-censorship, is when you censor yourself and say, I cannot say that because like my country is conservative, I can say that. But in my experience as a filmmaker, or now as an activist with Moroccan Outlaw, don't censor yourself. Just go and do it, and you'll be surprised. I really think this new generation is more and more woke and want to talk about it, and also that the older generation is more and more aware of this new generation. But the only way to do that is to gather, is like to be together and to have this space, even if you're not only on social media, when you gather all those people to have this big voice.
So the audience, if you have more questions for Sonia, please, once again, you can use the comment section on Facebook or the Q&A function on Zoom. I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. So maybe, Sonia, because you are, most of the activism you do at the moment is online, also given the Corona circumstances, of course. But I know that you have also organized some physical protests in the past. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We didn't organize protests in the traditional way, like go on the streets and speak up, because I think if we do that one day, we have to be ready for it, and we have to really prepare and like be a lot of people. We cannot just go like 100 people in the street and say, yeah, we want to abort these laws. It won't work. it has to be bigger. So our strategy now is like to continue opening the debates. For example, in universities, we were used to be invited a lot in universities in debates, and we had thousands of young people in front of us, and we talked to them. And we had also this signature stand where we brought the petition for the parliament, and young people, they come and they sign it and they have talk with us. So we are just more in this kind of strategy, if you want. Like when this coronavirus crisis will end, we will continue to do that. We will send. We are planning to send like a lot of young people all over Morocco to spread awareness. We want also to publish like some books with numbers, statistics that you were talking about, and with information, and even doing some sex education, and like give those books for free. We have a lot of ideas in mind. We just like waiting for like to finish raising funds, and as I told you, to organize better. But we are going to do more and more in the future for sure.
This was also a question from Patricia, who wanted to know what your next goals are. And she comments that everything you've talked about so far sounds very hopeful. So I think that's also nice as a feedback for you.
Yes, I'm really happy. Thank you.
Maybe like you mentioned it now, sex education. It's a big taboo in a lot of countries of the region. So how does this actually work? Like, where do you get your information from as, saying, a young woman, for example, who wants to find out about safe sex and these kind of things?
Everything is on internet now. Like I know which is I'm discovering it along the way also. Like Instagram, there are a lot of small accounts of like young girls and boys that are making these accounts and talking about sexual education and stuff. Some of them have a lot of followers, some not, and a lot of time we try to gather them, to call them and say, hey, let's do a partnership together. We want you to also to get our audience, like to I lost my word. Like we will bring our audience to you, and let's do this cross posting. So we will make your page known as well, and we love that. We love taking like small pages that are willing, that these young people that's in their like in just in their room, and they're willing to do so much. And so we love to go to them and help them to get more audience and more awareness, because we are convinced that that's the only way young people today, especially young girl, has this information, is on Instagram and stuff like this. So we are really aware of it, and we are doing our best to provide it, and to provide it well.
And we have another question from Claudia. I don't know if it's the same Claudia or a new Claudia. Is the support of Western feminists helpful for you? Or could it also be counterproductive?
It can be counterproductive, because a lot of people say, yeah, this is like Western ideas, and that's this, we don't need that because we're an Arab country and Muslim country and stuff like this. But in the meantime, like when we won the Simone de Beauvoir freedom of women freedom prize, it was huge for us, because when we are raising funds and we go like to big organization worldwide and say, okay, we have this kind of followers in social media, and we did this and we did that, and we won the Simone de Beauvoir prize, it's helpful for us, because it's like international recognition, and we know that's the way to do it. So we just have to keep being prudent, being aware of like not crossing lines. Like we will not bring like a Western feminist to talk on our pages or stuff like this, but we want that, as I said before, we really want to work alongside with like bigger organization in the Arab country, but also in the world, and to do like we have a lot of things to create and to discuss. And for example, religion, like how today we can bring together the religion and this talk, and how and who can do it. Like we have people in Morocco that are really like they know religion really well, and the scholars, religion scholars, but in the meantime they are liberal and they talk about it, but they are very few. It's like 2 or 3 people. So I would love to have like this huge like collective of Arab women or even Arab scholars, and bring this debate in the Arab world and stuff like this. That would be great for us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Sonia, thank you very, very much for your input and for your time.
Thank
it was
you so
really
much.
Nice. Finally also put a face to the name and see you live. And thank you, dear audience, for your questions. We will now move on to our next speaker. So yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you for having me. Bye.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, so we will now move on to our second speaker of this evening, Nour Al Mukhled. And Nour is a project manager of Eithar, a Kuwaiti non-profit organization advocating for women's rights and female empowerment. One of Eithar's campaign is called Abolish 153, which aims at changing an article, the Article 153 of the Kuwaiti Penal Code. So welcome, Nour in Kuwait. And yeah, the floor is...
Hi, hello.
Hi.
Hi, I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you can hear me. I've been having connection problems.
Okay, but I think we hear you quite well now. So.
Okay, great. Thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it. And thank you for your interest in our cause, which is a very important cause, I think, that should be addressed not only in Kuwait, but everywhere else in the world. If I may start with a brief introduction of myself and why I decided to take a part of being in the women empowerment and female empowerment field, and to advocate for, let's say, female empowerment and stand against gender-based violence in all its forms. When I was a student doing my undergrad in Kuwait, I was involved in student politics. I served in the student union for 3 consecutive years. 1 year as the head of a committee and 2 as vice president. So naturally and historically, members of the union would normally run as vice president for 1 year, and then they would automatically or presumably run for president the year after. When I assumed that the same would apply to me in my 3rd year, I was turned down for my gender. The shocking and horrifying part about it that I honestly have been ashamed to mention for the longest time, but I think it's worth speaking of now due to the common nature of it. So the most shocking part about this incident is my compliance to it and accepting to run as vice president again, which never happened before. I think this all comes back to the institutionalized patriarchal mindset that has been embedded in the system that we have been raised in, and to the unspoken notion that women are allowed to only run in certain positions, and this is also considered in a to happen in a smaller scale as opposed to the let's say the larger scale where women almost rarely hold leadership positions everywhere else in the world and in like bigger organizations and governmental institutions. So anyways, when I graduated, I decided to explore the field of female empowerment and to learn more about it because like the incident has always been there. Like it has always been in the back of my head, and it still annoys me up to today, and it still frustrates me very, very much. And I'm sure that many women encounter and go through the same experience, which I can honestly relate to. So when I graduated, I decided to explore the female empowerment field, to do what I can do in terms of empowering women the way I have been empowered throughout the past years. So I joined the Abolish 153 campaign, which started in 2014. So Abolish 153, for those who are not familiar with it, is an awareness campaign. It started in 2014 to eradicate domestic violence in the country. The campaign's main target is to abolish Article 153 of Kuwait's Penal Code, which stipulate that a man who murders his sister, his mother, his wife, his daughter, after surprising her, and quote unquote surprising her, in an act of adultery, can receive a maximum punishment of 3 years or a fine of 3,000 rupees. So in other words, this act of murder is treated as a misdemeanor rather than an actual murder. The fact that this article is still in rupees shows how archaic it is. It is extremely problematic, and it's problematic for 3 main reasons. One is that it goes against the gender, race, and religion blind spirit of the Kuwaiti Constitution. Secondly, the law is in complete disagreement with all, or let's say most, of the international covenants and agreements Kuwait has signed on, especially that of CEDAW and the Covenant of Human Rights. Thirdly, it defies the Islamic Sharia, which prohibits murder in all its cases. With that being said, after initiating the campaign, many women that are undergoing violence at home started approaching us, seeking help, and due to the lack of infrastructure and legislations and shelter that can assist these women, we as a sister of Abolish called Eithar. The Eithar volunteer group is on the front lines of helping survivors of abuse. What we do is we're a team made up of lawyers, psychologists, advocates, people specialized in different fields. And what we do is we try to basically take in women who undergo gender-based violence, and we try to find them a shelter due to, as I mentioned before, the lack of shelter in Kuwait. So we try to assist them legally, and we try to assist them in terms of providing them with a shelter. And we advocate and we lobby and we try to do everything that needs to be done in order for these women to find help. So it's, what else can I say about this? I think it's because the idea of honor is so ingrained and deeply rooted in the culture. We tried to confront the issue through cultural awareness and advocated for it politically, socially, and culturally. We held several cultural educational events to advocate and mobilize against the article and gender violence and to highlight women's role in society. What we did is we conducted a play in Al Shahid Park, one of the biggest parks in Kuwait, that portrayed the reality and the consequences of gender-based violence in Kuwait. It also portrayed what the lack of a legislation and official infrastructure is, how this is harming women in Kuwait and families in Kuwait. We've also trained different civil society organizations, members of the social police. We've tried to basically get integrated and try to involve as many organizations and institutions that we possibly can. So as I mentioned before, the lack of legislation and official infrastructure in the country has led to horrific stories that I think people still find it hard to believe. Like we've seen an 18-year-old girl sleeping in a public garden in Kuwait because she was kicked out by her own father just for standing up for her mother that was being brutally, basically brutally abused by her own husband. And all that had to be done or could be done at that time was for the lawyer to basically, she couldn't even file a case against her father. What she did was make him sign on, let's say, like some sort of, it wasn't even a restraining order. It was like a agreement that he wouldn't like abuse her again. And she because due to the lack of shelter and places to help her, she had to go back to her home. We have faced many challenges throughout our journey. Many people denied the existence of violence in Kuwait and gender-based violence in Kuwait. Many people said that this is not an epidemic. Why are you focusing on it? There are more important things that you should be focusing on. This is way too early. It's way too controversial. You're putting yourself in very embarrassing situations. And some people were actually willing to support us, but behind the scenes, because they didn't want to be publicly associated with an organization that advocates against gender-based violence for, I guess, traditional reasons. Throughout our journey, we've had two major wins. One would be the passing of a bill in 2017, and that happened because 4 independent male parliamentarians signed on it, and the only female parliamentarian also signed on it. It has been set under the urgent agenda, but it has yet to be implemented. Another major win is, thank God, Kuwait has finally passed a domestic violence law in August of this year, which will give us the ability to prosecute abusers and operate the inaugurated shelters. And yeah, I mean, like, given that there have been historic wins for women's rights in Kuwait, we're still facing a social problem and medieval mentality that women are less or weaker or unworthy of holding leadership positions simply due to their gender. And that's it for now.
Thank you very much for this introduction.
Thank you.
And yes, as with our previous speakers, we are now taking questions from the audience. So if you have any questions for Nour, I'm sure she would be very happy to answer them, because to be honest, it's also a very nice opportunity to have you here, since quite frankly, in the German context, we don't hear so much about the situation in Kuwait. And also, as a self-critic, so to say, at this Orient, we rarely have any information on what's going on in Kuwait, and it's really a shame. So thank you very much once again for joining us tonight.
Thank you. I'm more than happy to join you.
Thank you. So when it comes to these shelters that you mentioned, how can I imagine the process? Like, how do these women get in touch with you?
So we basically have a hotline that we created for ourselves, and women always contact us through our social media accounts, whether it be on Twitter or Instagram. And then we try to, like, our first step is to always put them in contact with our lawyer, so she can take a look at the legal aspect of it and see what she can do. And then we try to find them a shelter within our budget. It used to be a very hard process, to be honest, due to the policies in Kuwait, where it's not illegal. It's just there are different policies that state that women are not allowed to rent hotels or apartments if they don't have marriage contract. So it was hard to operate, but we were able to get through it, thank God. And now, because of the passing of the domestic violence law, it's going to be hopefully much easier to assist them.
Mm-hmm. There's a question from Katja, and she would like to know if you have any numbers and statistics on your cause.
Unfortunately, because people, due to cultural and traditional reasons, people tend not to file cases. And even when they do, it's not under, let's say, they don't file it in terms of being abused by their family or their fathers or their brothers. Like, that's the thing with conservative societies. Like, it wouldn't it's okay to internalize abusive behavior in order to preserve family honor. As like for us in Eithar and Abolish, we've helped more than 100 families so far, and especially with the peak of numbers during COVID-19, the numbers were insane, and we tried our best to like assist everyone, but it was very hard. And even when women, like based on statistics, and I think I want to say 2016, even when women do file cases against their own male kins, they tend to back down and like remove it from the system just so they would save their family honor.
Thank you very much. We have another question from the audience, and it's a bit long, but it's very interesting and important question, I think, in the context of Kuwait. In what kind of ways is your important work for emancipation and empowerment of women in Kuwait also incorporating non-Kuwaiti citizens, like migrant workers? Because for all of our audience who are not so familiar with the Kuwaiti context, the percentage of non-Kuwaiti residents in Kuwait is actually very high. So how do you incorporate these different kinds of parts of population?
We like 100% do not discriminate between all the nationals and nationalities in Kuwait. Like our help is offered to Kuwaitis and non-Kuwaitis equally, 100%. And the majority of the cases we do have in Eithar are non-Kuwaitis actually. And the law that has been passed through the parliament and is official now does not discriminate between all nationalities. So I hope that answers your questions, whether they be migrant workers or not.
But in terms of maybe the more general overview, I mean, is there any sort of maybe a specific organization or initiative where migrant workers organize, like female migrant workers? And I mean, maybe you could also talk a bit about the general overview of women's organizations in Kuwait. Like how would you describe, how many are there?
I think there are quite a few number of women organizations in Kuwait. There are official ones, and there are ones that have been there for a very long time now, like the Women Cultural Society. There are other organizations that we have been affiliated with in the past and are still working with, such as the Optimist and other NGOs that don't just focus on women issues, but issues that predominantly affect women. Like thankfully, I think CSOs do have the power to change and create legislations in Kuwait. And that's a good thing because they're the ones who lobby and advocate for issues that concern citizens the most. I think like working together, and as I've mentioned before, we've trained around 36, I want to say, civil society organization members to work and advocate for the same issue, because at the end of the day, it's like you want to work with the system and not against the system. Do you know what I mean? So we all try to work together and advocate in the same way.
A question from Chris, who would like to know, where do you get your funding from? From outside Kuwait or from within?
Okay, so it depends. Like if you're talking about Eithar is a registered NGO, which restricts us from like having outside, funding from the outside. What we do though is we do hold an annual art exhibition in Kuwait, and we have like people from all around the Arab region participate in selling their art, and the revenue we get is solely dedicated to helping the survivors of abuse.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Then we have a question from Lena. Nour mentioned that there is only one woman in parliament. Still, there are 3 politicians supporting more women's rights. Or who are you talking to on a political level?
On a political level, we usually visit MPs nonstop. We like before the passing of the legislation and the bill, we've been going back and forth, and that's what I honestly think that's a good thing about Kuwait, is that it's very easy to get in contact with MPs and even ministers. So we've been going back and forth to MPs. We've been in contact with Women and Family Committee in the Parliament. We have been in good contact with the only female parliamentarian in Kuwait, among other parliamentarians. But it's our work in the, let's say, gender-based violence field that made us acutely aware of the effects of not having enough women in leadership positions and decision-making positions, because they're the ones who may like, let's say, bring about change in terms of implementing and creating legislations that will further enhance gender equality in Kuwait.
What do you think in terms of, because the last emir of Kuwait just passed away a couple of days ago, and now there has been a change also in terms of the head of state. Do you think this is going to change anything in the cause you're fighting for?
I honestly don't think that anything is going to change in these terms, because Sheikh Nour Al Ahmed is like his late brother, Sheikh Ahmed Sabah, is like as equally as let's say a female supporter as his brother. So I honestly don't feel like the system in these terms will change. And if they do change, I really hope they would change for the better.
Well, I thank you very, very much, Nour, for your input and sharing your thoughts with us this afternoon. It was very interesting to get your
pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Yeah, all the best. And I hope we will hear more from you and your cause soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. So now we will move on to our final and third speaker of this evening. And as you are aware, we're traveling now to Sudan virtually. In April 2019, the world actually woke up to news that for a long time seems kind of, that nobody would have expected this to happen. But in April 2019, Omar al-Bashir, the head of state in Sudan, had been toppled by the military regime after months of protests, civilian protests, that were nationwide all over Sudan, who called for him to step down after 30 years, actually. And this time of Omar al-Bashir was a very repressive time in Sudan, which also meant that we didn't meaning here in Germany or in Europe, didn't get a lot of easy access to information what was going on the ground in Sudan, and especially also on the consequences that this regime had for women living in the country. Activist Muzna Alhaj is now joining us, and she was one of the activists on the streets of Khartoum who went to protest during the Sudanese revolution. She is a communication professional and also a member of the media committee at Mansam, which is a coalition of different Sudanese women organizations on a civil and political level. She will talk to us about the role of women during the revolution in Sudan, and also what changed for them now during the transitional period that we are currently witnessing. So it's very great, Muzna, to have you tonight here with us. So the stage is yours.
Hello, everyone. and thank you for having me. Thank you, Disorient and Sharq, and I wish a lovely time for all those who are joining us today. So as you've mentioned before, it's been long 30 years of an oppression and authoritarian regime that actually practiced a lot of crimes and human rights violations and crimes against humanity. The victims were basically the entire Sudanese nation, but women precisely had to endure a lot of miseries and a lot of violations from the system of or the regime of Omar al-Bashir. So I think when the revolution started, women were already knew that they have to join it immediately and front lines because they had all the motives, whether there were women IDPs and refugees who suffered during war and conflict in Darfur and South Kordofan and other conflict areas in Sudan, or whether they were just like other female activists who are living in large cities like Al Khartoum, who were falsely jailed or harassed into stopping their activism. So there were all type different of violations that actually encouraged women to join the revolution. So I think like I remember clearly in the first protest that took place in Khartoum in the 25th of December 2018, young girls all standing in this very narrow alley and actually waiting for a raid at any time by the security forces. And like one of them basically stood in the beginning of the street. She was waiting for the cars to come and raid us and start firing tear gas at us, but she was shouting very loudly, asking everyone to stand still their place and not run away this time, because she believed that this time we're going to face them and we're going to succeed in toppling this this regime. Of course, Omar al-Bashir did not walk away without a fight. We at least fought for long 4 months. I recall in the 17th of January that hundreds of women were arrested, especially young women, because al-Bashir thought that um, if you crush the women, if you break the women, then you can certainly like influence the waves of the protesters in Sudan. So they ended up arresting all these women on the 17th of January. And like it was filmed clearly. You can like people were filming outside the prison cells, and they can clearly hear these women singing loudly a very famous revolutionary song that goes like, "We sing while in your captivity, and you tremble in fear inside your palace." Also, I recall in the 10th of February, actually, which marked a very remarkable march by women who were calling for the immediate release of all women detainees, because during the revolution, it's been said that approximately 1,000 women were arrested. So this rally was also a very remarkable and successful moment of the revolution, where women showed support for each other and solidarity. Also, we had different events where women just celebrated this revolution in their own way. I recall in one of the days of the sit-in. The sit-in actually started on April 6th. So a very large convoy of different women from Darfur traveling all the way to Khartoum just to provide certain type of hospitality that the women of Darfur usually provide for their guests, and they are called Mayarim Darfur. I'll try to share a screen and show you a picture of them. So this is a picture of Mayarim Darfur carrying all this food and trays, trying to express their hospitality to all the rebels in the sit-in area. Also, this is another picture of the traditional utensils in which they provide food. So during the sit-in, these were also great times for women. You could basically walk around and see different female activists taking the stage, talking to people about the transition to democracy, or actually standing and surrounded by hundreds of activists talking to them about the different demands and and the dreams and perspectives of Sudanese people for this revolution. But naturally, when the sit-in was dispersed or cracked down on June 3rd, women were also among the victims because their presence was very obvious during the sit-in. So they were working as paramedics, doctors, preparing food, conducting all these different revolutionary roles, and being part of all the organizational bodies that took on the revolution of Sudan to the stage of ousting al-Bashir. So on June 3rd, unfortunately, the hybrid forces that committed the live-streamed massacre raped, burned, and killed women, and even held them hostages. It's been said at least 70 women and men were actually raped, and at least one of these victims is believed to has believed to committed suicide due to the aftermath of her rape. I would say that the inspirational acts of Sudanese women like also went beyond the borders. Sudanese diaspora women were also very active in campaigning, advocating, and mobilizing. They were also very keen on like turning or attracting the focus of the entire world towards the Sudanese revolution, the protests that were happening, and they managed to generate a lot of attention to the cause of the Sudanese people. If I may share just like a short clip of a Sudanese woman just like chanting one of the revolutionary chants. So as you can see, they were very active and supportive of the cause of their people. Then again, this takes me to a very interesting topic that was widely spread about the Sudanese revolution, which is the icons of the Sudanese revolution. A picture for the young lady Ala Salah wearing the Sudanese traditional garment top on the top of a car was widely spread and looked upon as what represents the icon of the Sudanese women or the Sudanese revolution. And I think as great as Ala Salah looked in that picture and as aesthetically pleasing it looked, but it's also worth mentioning that the Sudanese revolution had several and different women icons. To mention a few is Rifqa Abdurrahman. So Rifqa was a brave heart young girl who was known for throwing back tear gas cans at police. And I will also show you a video by Rifqa later on. And there was also Muna Zahir and Muna Qasim, also remarkable ladies that I will show you pictures of, who were, I think, among few or like, let's say, many Sudanese women who deserve also to be iconized. So I'm just going to show a picture of both of them. So this is Muna Zahir. Actually, Muna Zahir during the early times of the revolution, the Sudanese Professionals Association, which is the body that took on the organization of the revolution and called for protests, they called for what a practice for sit-in within the neighborhoods. And in her neighborhood, Muna was the only one who responded to this call. And she formed this one-woman sit-in. And also here, another example of a young lady that represents a one-woman march, because she wanted to go out on a protest, but all the other girls in her neighborhood did not respond. Here is Muna Gassim. So as you can see in these four pictures, Muna Gassim actually used to go to protests while walking on canes. And during the protest, you could be chased, killed, arrested, or beaten by security forces. And Muna risked all of that and participated actively during the protests. So I think she represents what an icon could be. So back to that, after addressing all the different achievements of Sudanese women during the revolution, it was the time for the Sudanese women to try to realize the outcomes of participating in a revolution and toppling a dictator. So we had some sort of high expectations, at least regarding the political participation of women when it came to the three different levels of government representations. Unfortunately, the reality was not matching for the expectations that women had. So despite the fact that women were very organized within different women groups and bodies like Mensam, for example, which is a coalition as you defined it for civilian and political women groups, who were actually very keen on having lists of female candidates for all the different government positions. But still, we ended up with 2 members in the Sovereign Council out of 11 members. We ended up having 4 ministers in the cabinet out of 20 ministers. And we also have 2 female state governors out of 18 state governors. So the numbers are quite disappointing. And I think it's important for women to focus on numbers because we know if it's just left for the other political forces in Sudan, women would not get any sort of representation. Just to highlight that, at least for the female, the appointing of the 2 female governors, women actually had to launch this campaign asking for their right in having a representation in a federal and local governments. And after the pressure and the lobbying of this campaign, we ended up with 2 female governors. Now we're all anticipating the assigning of the 350 members of the Transitional Legislative Council. Women were recurrently being promised 40% representation. As problematic as this percentage might be, because it's often written as not less than 40%, but there are no guarantees that women will be granted 40% of the legislative council seat. But I think it's important for women to fight for this representation specifically, because this legislative council is going to act as a parliament. So many of the different laws that directly impact the lives of women, their freedom and their choices will be passed through this legislative council. So women need to be in control of all the decisions and the laws and legislative reforms that will shape their lives. I would say also that since the beginning of the transitional period, several legal reforms took place that directly affects the freedoms and the lives of women in Sudan. For example, in December 2019, like less than 4 months of the rule of the new transitional government, they abolished the very extremely notorious law of public order. This law used to arrest whether tea seller ladies, arrest political activists, and like whip them or make them pay fines in crimes of alleged adultery or indecent attire, or these type of absurd crimes. So this law was abolished. And then also new legal reforms took place during this year that address different laws. For example, one of the very also like obscene laws, family laws in Sudan, is that women are not allowed to travel with their children without the permission of the father of the child. So in case she's divorced or separated from the husband, and for some reason he's not allowing her to travel with her own children, he has this right to stop her from traveling with her children. So this law was abolished. Also, one of the important new legal reforms was the ban of the female genital mutilation, and actually criminalizing those who practice female genital mutilation. So recently, some of midwives like caught practicing FGM were immediately like arrested and fined. Also, among other legal reforms that had recently took place in Sudan is the ban of the death penalty for consensual same-sex sexual relations. And we think that as good as these legal reforms might be, but we also have to consider the gap or the problem in the implementation of these laws and the law enforcement bodies, because the different agencies or institutions that are still involved the different institutions that are involved in the law enforcement and implementation of legal reforms in Sudan are still problematic, notorious, did not undergo any sort of like reforms themselves. So the police has very unsettling behavior when it comes to the enforcement of these laws. Some women actually were granted the right to travel with their children without the consent of the father, but some other women were denied that right. So I think like the Minister of Justice or the entire cabinet needs to work more with the security forces on their training and or their implementation and enforcement of these different laws. I would also add, like, generally speaking, despite everything that's happening, women are still managing to mobilize. Lots of young women have created relatively new groups calling for, I would say, progressive approaches for feminism in Sudan. So there's the Noon movement, there's the Guardians movement, there's Khamsin movement, which means 50 in English, that calls for 50% representation of women. And I think there's a good sense of collaboration between these different women groups, but also I think we need more like at least self-critique for our experience. We need to come up with new methodologies for mobilization and a way to keep the fight going, because this is a rough transition. It's very it's not easy that part of the government that's civilian and the other part is military, and it's not an easy partnership. Many of us as Sudanese people like we're hopeful about the future, but we're also very cautious and calculating of our moves because we think that whatever is taking place, there are still some serious violations happening in different areas of Sudan, serious violations happening in Darfur, and recently also there are some arrests that take place for some of the activists, even in Khartoum. So I think we just need to work more on our methodologies and ways of like mobilization and organizing and coming up with new tactics to be able to occupy all the spaces that available for us now as women, and also be able to like appear in different platforms and try to campaign and advocate for our issues as long as we can do this. So this is it for me. Thank you. Now I'm ready if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Muzna. It was really interesting to hear your insights. And as with all the other speakers, dear audience, you now have the chance to ask Muzna all kinds of questions that you're interested in. So one last time, I just mentioned, please use the Facebook comments to send us your questions or use the Q&A function on Zoom. And we will start with a question from Irina, who already sent us a question, and it regards the protest song you mentioned earlier during your presentation. She would like to know the name of the song because, she writes, she is a DJ and I am very interested in protest music from all over the world. And are there any other feminist bands from Sudan that you could mention?
Okay, the song is by a famous singer called Muhammad Al-Amin. If she stays, I can definitely put a link to the song and also to the video of young women singing from inside the prison cells, if that's good for her. Like mostly Sudan has a very rich revolutionary culture. We have a lot of songs, well-known chants within Sudan that are passed through different generations. So yes, we have a very rich revolutionary artistic culture, but there are no like female or feminist bands per se in Sudan.
Mm-hmm. Well, Paula is asking, how do you manage to bring together women from rural and urban areas?
Okay, so definitely I think the good side of having very large or wide coalitions like Mensam or any other women coalitions, that we try as much as possible to reach out to women from different areas of Sudan. So we have a very wide network. This network, we make sure that it's very inclusive for women from all different 18 states of Sudan. Mensam has been doing these field trips to the all different states of Sudan, especially the states that usually people do not reach out to. So they go and they conduct all these surveys there and try to create local networks with women, whether organizations or even an informal or unregistered groups there.
Thank you. I would like to know, we have now talked about law enforcement and the changes that have already been made on a more, on a top level, so to say. But I would like to know more about discussions within the societies, because I would assume, as we have seen in other places that went through a revolutionary phase, there are all of these topics now being addressed by women, also within the society itself. So is this also something that's happening now in Sudan? And if so, what are some of the topics that are currently discussed?
Definitely within women groups, I think the political participation and how we can further campaign and work on increasing the political participation of women, especially that now we're in times amid the recent signing of the peace agreement of Sudan. So new political forces will be accommodated within the 3 levels of rule in Sudan. And it's very important also to accommodate to the women signing the peace agreement from the different rebel groups who have recently signed. So I guess these among the topics. Also, the law reforms or the legal reforms needs to be reviewed further, because there are still many laws and legislations that directly or negatively impact the lives of women that need to be changed and addressed. Regarding the legal reforms, I think that there are different types of conversations. We have, of course, the ex-NCP's members and some of the mainstream who think that these legal reforms are quite controversial for what they think of as a conservative community. But Sudan is not necessarily conservative from the perspective of all Sudanese. Some women groups or overall people with legal backgrounds think that it's quite controversial to just have this top-bottom approach of changing the laws and legislations, and they think that we need to have a procedure and to take these legal reforms to a parliament or a legislative body. Many of the members, at least I know in different women groups, they are celebratory of these changes, and they think that these are like good moves in a long way of law reforms.
You mentioned now the peace agreement, and this is a pretty recent development, and I think it hasn't gained a lot of attention here, especially in the German press. So could you maybe tell us a little bit more about it? Like, what is this agreement actually all about, and who is implementing it?
So the peace agreement was between the transitional government of Sudan and the Sudanese Revolutionary Front and the Sudanese People Liberation Movement North, like certain factions of these two movements. So these two movements, they've been part of larger rebel groups who have been like carrying arms and fighting the National Congress Party or the regime of al-Bashir because of the misconduct of that regime and their refusal to share power and wealth with people who view themselves as has the legitimate right to be part of the power and wealth equation. These two armed movements come from Darfur, Blue Nile, and some of them have like limited presence in South Kordofan. They're all southern states in Sudan. So they have recently, or on Saturday, just signed and celebrated the signing of this peace agreement through the mediation of the neighboring country of South Sudan. This peace agreement will include several aspects of security arrangement, disarmament of these armies of these rebel groups and their integration within the larger Sudanese armed forces. It also includes agreements regarding power sharing and wealth sharing in these wide and rich regions of Sudan.
Thank you. We have a question from Adrian, who is asking, do you think that there are any groups of men who are afraid of the feminist movements and who try to defend the traditional and or other order against changes to more rights for women, and who could be seen as anti-feminists?
Certainly, and I'm not just going to accuse Islamists or members of the ousted regime of this. Even many mainstream Sudanese men are against these feminist movements or even the changes that has best interest in females in its account, because men see this as an authority. We still pretty much have a very patriarchal society that thinks they gain power from keeping some of the privilege and leaving women with very limited privileges and resources. So a lot of different groups of men, not necessarily organized, are against this. And also I would accuse Sudanese politicians and some of the intellectuals of Sudan of the same misconducts, because if they're serious about the integration and the participation of women, we wouldn't end up with these ridiculous levels of political participation. I would say also that there is a very obvious attack on feminists, especially on social media. It's very obvious and evident, as I have been talking to several fellow activists on how to work and try to like at least combat or like counterpart this campaign against feminists and feminist movement, because all feminists in Sudan, especially those who are very vocal or viewed as radical feminists, are always bullied and tarnished and severely attacked on social media. And I don't think we as women, and especially female activists, have yet came up with tactics to try to like counterpart this behavior.
Thank you. And we have a question from Ibrahim. Do you think that the Sudanese women's movement is linked to each other in terms of generations? And how does the community receive feminism as a concept in the political context of Sudan?
Okay, for the first part of the question, I would say that definitely Sudanese, in terms of generations, I would see that there is a gap, although some bodies like Mensam, for example, it includes different groups of women coming from different backgrounds and age groups. But I still say in reality, this generation gap is going to get bigger. And I think it's very important for older generation who had a very long history of political breakthroughs and achievements in Sudan to try to like accommodate and cater to the younger generations and have sort of good and prospective relationship with them. As for the second part of the question, I think like the feminist efforts in Sudan, especially in terms of like academic point of view regarding feminist or even explanation of concepts and like the theoretical different theories on feminism and different waves of feminism, I would say that Sudanese society still needs to know a lot about it, because I think this rejection, this strong rejection of feminism in Sudan is coming also from lack of awareness. Yes, I realize it's men trying to defend their privilege, but I also think it's part of the lack of awareness. So I think as feminists, we need to like walk different milestones in order to try to simplify the concept of feminism, even to like adhere to different sectors of women themselves in the society. We're not just targeting men and looking at them as the enemy. Some women also, their lack of understanding of feminism makes them attack all the feminism efforts in Sudan.
What are you wishing for in terms of the international community? Since we have an international platform today, also doing this event, for example, in English, what would you wish for?
I think it's good for the international community that's at least providing platforms and trying to listen and know what's happening in Sudan from locals who would give a perspective that's not necessarily provided through the international media. Currently, I think this transitional government is receiving all types of support, but I think maybe in terms of activism, like feminist activism or even political activism, Sudanese women could always use the solidarity, and they could always like use at least the connection and exchange of experiences and expertise.
So I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. And since Muzna is also the last speaker of tonight, if you haven't taken your chance to ask any questions, now would be the time. And meanwhile, we have a comment from Adrian who says, "Thank you very much, Muzna. Sadly, we have the same anti-feminist social media behavior here in Germany." So he is, trying to express his solidarity for your cause. And other questions we have. There's one from Chris. I think also going back a bit to one of my earlier questions I had for you. Do you have the impressions that anything changed in society, acknowledging the role women played in the revolution?
I think definitely, yes. Like for some time post-revolution and up till this moment, I believe that there is much recognition and respect for women, especially among younger men, because they've been standing there facing danger, shoulder to shoulder with these women, and they've seen how powerful these women are, and they've seen their real capabilities and what are they enabled to do. So I think definitely there's much respect for women, and at least the underestimation or the lack of realization of their true like intellectual and physical abilities, I would say, have at least diminished like for a while. I hope it doesn't come back, but yes.
Okay. I would say thank you very, very much, Muzna. It was really a pleasure to have you here, and we worked hard to make it work. And I'm very happy that also the connection lasted. So yeah, thank you so much. And if you could maybe provide us with the link of the song, I think for our music fan, that would be very, very much appreciated. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
And, Yeah, and we will post it under the link on Facebook once you send it. So yeah, Irina, keep your eyes open for it. Okay. And other than that, have a good night, and bye bye to Khartoum.
Thank you very much for having me, and it's been a pleasure. And yes, I'm going to provide the link.
Okay, awesome. Okay, bye bye, Muzna.
Bye.
Okay, so this was basically it, our evening on female and feminist activism in West Asia and North Africa. I thank you all very much for your attention and your interesting questions. And also want to thank, of course, all the speakers that we had today. Also want to thank the team here in Berlin that you cannot see right now, but I see them, and they have also put a lot of effort and time into this event. So if you appreciate our efforts, once again, if you'd like, we would very much appreciate if you could make a donation so we can organize more of these events that are free for attendance and for your interest. And please keep also an eye open for the following and upcoming events that we will have here on these platforms. The Ferngespräche are still going on, the series. So the next one will be held actually in 10 days from now, and on the topic of Palestine. So we're gonna talk to activists on the ground there, and all the events, you can find them on our Facebook page on this Orient, but also our Shark. So yeah, keep an eye open, and I wish you all a very good night or good day, depending on where you are in the world. Bye-bye.